as you might have guessed, I'm quite interested in place names. And last video, I spoke about an interesting hydronym, the origins of the name for the river Douro in Portugal. Today, I actually want to talk about toponyms, predominantly what conforms to the modern-day Kingdom of Spain, because they're interesting and perhaps not entirely intuitive. All of these toponyms that I'm going to discuss are actually of Roman origin. So compared to what we were discussing in the Douro video, of relatively recent origin. But they're pretty surprising. And the first I want to start out with is Zaragoza on the eastern side of modern-day Spain. Many of you will know that it was previously called Zaragoza, but perhaps you don't know what it was initially called. I'm going to give you a few minutes to pause, collect your thoughts, and get an idea, make a guess as to what Zaragoza initially was called during the period of Roman rule. Now, assuming you've done that, did you guess that it was Caesar Augustus? Yes, initially it was Caesar Augustus. Now, the classical pronunciation for the city would have been Caesarea Augustus. Obviously, over time, we know that those hard consonants tended to be assimilated, so we would not have Caesar Augustus, but Zaragoza, in a process of perhaps hypercorrection in which the pronunciation of the very first consonant spread across all the sibilants in the word itself. So Zaragoza today, if you visit it, if you see it on TV, remember that it actually comes from Caesarea Augustus Caesar, a city named after Augustus Caesar. And then there's another really interesting one, which dates all the way back to the early conquest of the Iberian Peninsula. And it's the kingdom, what would ultimately become the modern regional province of León. Now, you might think that this is pretty simple. León means lion in Spanish, and even the city's heraldry reflects that with the symbol of a lion. But this actually seems to be a case of anachronistic misinterpretation. It actually might interest you that it has actually nothing to do with lions at all. In fact, León is named after the Legio Septima Gemina, the twin seventh legion. So León comes from legione. Now, I understand, of course, that I've pronounced that with ecclesiastical pronunciation, which isn't entirely accurate. Maybe it's a little bit anachronistic, but you get the general idea. So the place is named, in fact, after a legion, not after a lion, which I thought was pretty interesting. Now, I'm going to finish off with one last interesting toponym, and that's going to be for the city of Orléans in modern-day France. Orléans is actually named after the Emperor Aurelianus. That's where Orléans comes from. So New Orleans in the United States of America is actually New Aurelianus, Novus Aurelianus. I think that's an extremely interesting connection with the Roman past. I'm going to leave you there, but before we finish, maybe you know of a really interesting Latin origin toponym in your country, something that isn't obvious, something a little bit like how modern-day Cologne in Germany actually comes from Colonia Agrippina, the Agrippan colony. Let me know in the comments, because I'm always intrigued by this kind of thing. Valete.